Welcome to the Dr. Stacy Show, where we are talking about all things faith, love, and wellness. I'm your host, Dr. Stacy, and I'm excited to be kicking off my inaugural season. Each season, I plan to tackle a theme that's important to raising young people. This season, I'm actually going to be going off the theme of healing Black men and lifting Black boys. I'm going to be taking the time to talk to incredibly talented, amazing Black men in their fields and their professions to help us gain insight around areas of wellness and how we can support our Black men and boys. And so today, in the area of intellectual wellness, I am excited to have with us Dr. Michael E. Coleman Jr. Dr. Coleman has spent nearly over 2 decades as a noted educator for the Kansas City Board of Education. He's worked at various education levels, including a classroom teacher, building level administrator, district level supervisor, and higher education adjunct faculty. Dr. Coleman has been nominated for several awards, including Outstanding Achievement in Leadership, Male Who Makes a Difference Award, and he has presented at several region national conferences. I personally met Dr. Coleman and after following him on LinkedIn for a little while, but I personally met him at a presentation, Educators of Color and Leadership Symposium in New Jersey. Please welcome. Thank you, Dr. Coleman, for being with me today.
Thank you, Dr. Stacy. It's my pleasure. I definitely appreciate the opportunity, and I'm super excited.
Great. Well, Dr. Coleman, I am a therapist in mental health space, but you are on the ground in schools from an educational perspective. And one of the things that I know I see in my space, and I always tease people, if kids didn't have homework, I probably wouldn't have a job, right? I always say that.
Right.
That's one of those number one things that folks come into treatment and therapy for, especially for our male students. Talk to me a little bit of maybe what you've seen with the trends, even with connecting from male students to education.
Right. So in classrooms, in a pre-K to fifth grade setting, it seems as though our students, our male students, need to be more interactive, right? So when they're in the classroom, unfortunately, some of the curriculum doesn't align with their thought process, right? And also, the teachers, the way they deliver the instruction may not be engaging, or it may be a little, I don't want to say boring, but not exciting. Right. So the ultimate goal is to get our story, our boys involved. And how do we do that? We have to find what the interests are with our students, especially male students. In some cases, boys, they like sports, right? They like action. They like things that they can actually move around and be involved. Once you sit in front of a young man and just deliver instruction with no feeling, no energy, he's automatically going to be like, you know what? I'm going to tune out, right? And then this is where the behaviors in the classroom begin. They're not interested. So the question becomes, how can we make our lessons? How can we deliver instruction that makes our students be involved so they can be interested in what the teacher is saying? And that's the heavy lift, right? So in my practice as a school principal, I have conversations with my teachers. Hey, what can we do to make it exciting? How can you teach these students to make sure that, number one, the lessons being taught, that they're engaged, and then they're actually adding to the value of the lesson. One of the things that I do, I ask my teachers the first 3 days of school, I really don't want you to teach. I want you to know your students.
It's key.
Yes, once you get to know your students, right, their likes, their dislikes, then you can tailor the lesson and instruction around what they like so they can be engaged. That's the ultimate goal.
Yes. And you know what? I love how you said that because I remember I went to the library when my kids were little, and the children's librarian at the library said to me, if you're introducing your kids to the fiction books, and that's great. But she said, when they get to school, and she said, especially your son, when they get to school, he is not going to engage because there's no cars, there's no Lego movie. All the books I was picking for him to read, even thinking I was being educational, she said, he's going to have to read about rivers and lakes and science stuff. And that's going to be boring
Boring.
compared to books that you're picking out. And I thought that was such a, I mean, it changed my mindset even as a therapist, right? To say, hey, we do need to that our boys are engaged in the learning and education. Talk to me because I love how you picked out even that preschool to fifth grade. I know personally we're having a lot of referrals for male students who are just even in pre-K. Like they haven't even, I always say they haven't even started real school yet.
Right.
And we're seeing the difficulty there. Talk to us a little bit about what you see, even from the preschool perspective.
So the preschool perspective is interesting. First and foremost, that's the time where the child is separated from the parent and guardian for a long period of time. That's first and foremost, right? So that becomes a situation where child, the student, gets a little antsy because he's in an environment where his parent or guardian is not there. There's no easy access, right? So then the student begin to act out a little, right? And unfortunately, being that pre-K, I don't want to say it's voluntary. Pre-K is a situation where they don't have to go to pre-K. They're not
Mhm.
meant to go, right? So when that happens, suppose the parent or guardian get a few calls, hey, your child is very busy. He is not sitting down. He's not following the school rules or the classroom rules. Would you be able to come pick him up early? That's how it starts.
Mhm.
Pick him up early. And then once that happens, the student would get used to that schedule. And then once he stays 3 minutes longer, now even though he cannot tell the time, but he can feel the difference.
Right.
Once that student he stays 3 minutes over, then he really begin to act out. And that's when the teacher will have a conversation with his parents, say, "Hey, listen, we're having difficulties." And then the parent gets so many calls, he or she may be like, "Well, you know what? It's not mandatory. I'm going to take them out." But at that time, that pre-K, that's when we learn some really good foundational skills, right? So we really, really need that child there. Unfortunately, there are spaces in pre-K classrooms where there's like playtime. There's times that they can actually build things, do things of that nature. What I'm trying to do in my building is get more things that the young boys can play with. Right.
Mhm.
So there's a kitchen space, right? There's a lot of cute balls and cute things they can put together. There's a lot of coloring. But what about little clay toolkits or something like that that a young man can kind of get involved? And we're not being chauvinistic, right? We don't want to separate, but we definitely want to have something that the young men can actually play with so they can be engaged, right? And then they can work together as a team with the rest of the classmates.
Yeah, and I get you on that because these parents, I'm like, listen, if you think about kitchen sets, the most famous chefs in the world are men, right? So our boys definitely need to play with kitchen sets. But I also hear you because I'm a therapist that has a basketball net. I have Legos, I have magnetic tiles, I have building things in my space because I have found, even as a boy therapist, and I always coin that phrase that because work primarily when we talk about ADHD, autism, behavioral challenges with males, but I do find that interaction piece important just to even engage them in therapy. And that's only 45 minutes. So I can just imagine when you're talking 3 hours of school or 6 hours that we have to right go above and beyond from that engagement perspective. Dr.
Yeah.
Coleman, one thing you talked about that discipline moment, right? And reaching out to parents and the idea that even when the parent pulls their preschooler from school, they're missing instruction and discipline in schools. Unfortunately, when kids get suspended, they're missing so much instruction. Talk a little bit about that piece for us, would you?
Right. So one of the things I do in my building, I try my best not to suspend our children.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, in most cases, there's a high percentage rate of boys being suspended, expelled, referred, getting in trouble, after school programs, getting their recess taken away. The majority of our boys at that particular age, they go through that, right? So, what can I do to make sure that that won't happen? So, when a student, especially a male student, I want to say destructive in the classroom, I will have one of my culture and climate people have a conversation with them, and then I will have them come to my office, right? So, while, especially for pre K, let's say pre K, for example, there's times where there's playtime throughout the day, they have lunch, and then there's nap time. During the nap, the young men gets really rowdy. They want to do things. They don't want to take their nap. So
Honestly, right.
they don't want to sleep. So that's the time I take those students, they come with me, and we can do some fun things in the office if I have the time, right? If I don't have the time, I have my culture climate person do the same thing. But I want them to know that there's a space for them to kind of bond with me as the principal and bond with my culture climate person, which is a male. And then we just have these fun little games and do little things that they would like to do, right? And so I take a survey. Hey, the next time you come into the office, can you name a few things that you want to try? Oh, and of course, roadblocks. We're not doing that. But if there's any little fun games, activities you want to do, we can color some things. I can bring some like old football cards or whatever, just whatever, right? And those are the things that will kind to number one, de-escalate behaviors. But then again, I do not want to take the power away from the teacher.
Yeah.
So they will have to earn those things. So, Johnny, I just need a favor from you. I know you don't want to be here today. Please, let's get through this day. And then tomorrow, you come have lunch with me.
Mm.
Right. So I wanted to make it a reward type of situation instead of just taking away from the teacher and bringing him out. Because now the student is going to expect that, oh, I'm going to go see Dr. Coleman. I don't have,
Mhm.
we don't want that yet. They have to earn it. Yep.
Right. One of the things you talked about the discipline, and I love how this creative moment of adding relationship to discipline. I know when I talk to my middle school students, my older students who are getting discipline referrals for, let's say, disrespect,
Yeah.
right? And,
Yeah.
and that's such a vague discipline referral. It drives me insane. Talk a little bit about maybe what's happening even between teachers, educators, and students in those types of moments.
So that goes back to my original conversation in the beginning when I say the teachers have to know the students, right? So
Yeah.
here's the thing. Have our scholars from, let's say, 8:10 to 3 o'clock.
Hmm.
They are in our care, right? But what happens, the teachers do not know what happens when that student goes home. Now, they may not be fed. They may have their clothes are dirty. They don't have the resources that we have in school. So they are in survival mode
Mm.
while they're home. And we as teachers, and I did it when I first began teaching as well. Why can't you come into school and do what you're supposed to do? Why can't you get in on time? Why can't you? And my whole thing is this: I never knew what those children were going through when they're home.
Right.
So now I said to myself, you know what? Let me get to know you. Let's talk about some things.
Mhm.
Oh, and without being invasive, without asking specific questions, just
Mhm.
tell me about something. Oh, I get home, I'm by myself. I don't eat well. I have to wait till 8 o'clock because my mom worked a double shift. Once she come home, I'm super hungry. I eat, I go to bed. I don't get a chance to do homework. I don't get it.
Mhm.
Now I get it. So when you come in the next morning and you don't have your homework done, you're still hungry because you only ate one bowl of cereal last night and you're a little sleepy and tired. I get it now. But if I'm thinking of the lowest prospect, what a lot of teachers do, when I grew up, I had X, Y, and Z. I did this, that.
Mm.
The
Yeah.
resource is different. The resources are different.
Right.
So you just need to understand that when your scholars leave you, that's a whole different world that they enter that teachers don't know anything about. And maybe if you were young at the same age, you wouldn't know nothing about that either. But it's a survival mechanism. It's a skill that our young boys have to deal with. And when they get to school, they're not really ready to learn. So
Mhm.
how do we have those conversations so they're ready? How can we get them ready to learn? That's
Right.
the deal.
That's key. I love that. And I know you're a big proponent of special education and your heart there as well. Talk to me a little bit about because I know there are parents that are afraid to get diagnoses for their students. They're afraid to get IEPs or 504s because they're concerned with stigma and that's following them. Talk to that parent for a little bit about the importance of even just getting support for your student to stay connected.
Right. So special ed has changed since the time that we were growing up, right? There was a point in time where if you are a student with special needs and you have an IEP, your classroom will be somewhere in the basement somewhere, right? And you would not have the opportunity to work or play with your classmates, age appropriate classmates. And also you just be alienated from everyone else. Now with the inclusion and the different think model in terms of students with special needs, we want them to communicate with their peers. We want them to be in classrooms where, okay, I do have a learning disability. I may not get the concept. However, I'm still in a classroom where I may have two teachers, right? One special ed, one general ed, and I will still get the instruction. Now, parents, do some parents have a concern? Like, hey, listen, I don't want my student labeled because now they're going to talk about them for the rest of their lives. They're going to be made fun of, picked at in school, and I don't want that to be a part of my son's growing up. But here's what they need to know that special ed diagnoses can actually help them because now there's teachers, they're going to deliver instruction a little differently, right? They're going to meet the student where they are, and then they're going to build that student up. And that's the best part about it. But some parents, again, They don't want that label, but it's not about what the parents want. It's what's best for the student, what's
Mhm.
best for the child. And those are the conversations I have with my parents. Now, interesting enough, there's a flip side. There are parents, and this is unfortunate, there are parents who want their children to
Mhm.
be in special ed classes. There are parents that are going to say to their student, listen, I need you to act up in class because you know what? I just wrote the child study team. 20 days, I'm getting a referral. I'll be doing referral, and then we're going to get an interview. We'll have conversations with them. I really need you to act up because at the end of the day, once you get those services, it's a possibility that I can collect a SSI check, right?
I
That is selfish, but that's what happened. But then again, in our community, in our society,
Mhm.
that's actually a situation where the parent would then get extra funds. And,
Mm.
he or she may be working 2 or 3 jobs trying to make ends meet, and they still struggle. So I had that conversations at least 3 times with my parents. And it's a difficult conversation. I understand where it's coming from, but that particular student do not need those services. And being that I'm an advocate for special needs.
Right,
I
right.
want special needs,
Mm.
but I want the students to get what they really need. If they don't need it, let's put them in a grade or a class that has 2 teachers, but we don't have to give that student an IEP, but we still support.
Right.
It's fine. We can still support. But, and this is where, in some cases, in most cases, the overrepresentation of Black and Brown students, which is a whole nother situation. And I would love to have a conversation with you at another date because that's instead of 25, that's 45-minute
Yeah,
situation.
I know. Even to your point, it's interesting how we also see people seeking out diagnoses for accommodations, for example, for SATs. People seek out for law school, like I've known for the LSTAT exam. So you have both sides of that. What are we taking advantage of a diagnosis for and seeking it for, right? For an advantage in different ways.
So let's talk about that real quick. If you just give me
And
2 minutes. So once a student is a senior in high school, it's a possibility he or she may go away to college, right? And then once you go to college, you don't have an IEP, you have the 504. But here's the problem. Here's the problem. You are a student with newfound freedom.
mm-hmm.
You're not going to use that 504 in
You
a new
don't.
situation,
Yep.
right? Because now I'm grown.
Yeah.
I don't but, the colleges is not gonna contact my parent or guardian.
Yep.
I can choose to use this or not, but now I'm in college, I have a new identity. Your first year in college, you can start all over, you can be whoever you wanna be,
Mm-hmm.
right? And with
Right.
that, I'm not gonna be a student with special needs, I tell you that. So
Yeah.
I want my 504. Now
Mm-hmm.
here's the problem. If the student don't use their 504 and they don't get the combinations and modifications, fortunately, the professors, instructors, they do not, some of them do not know how to differentiate the instruction.
Right.
They
Right.
can meet the student where they are. Because let's say a college professor, he or she may be a chemist, right? He or she may be a biologist. They know all about chemistry, but
Right.
they don't know how to teach chemistry.
That's
The
what it's
pedagogical right, the pedagogical practices that they're lacking.
Yep.
And I'm not doing anything with no college professors. I love you all,
Right.
right? But
I'm one,
there's
right.
some okay. But if you're not in the actual field of education, when you don't know
Yeah.
the pedagogical practice or approaches, right? You
Mhm.
just know what you know. And sometimes it's hard to deliver that instruction because you don't know how to get to that particular student.
And I appreciate you saying that because that is where, again, even once they hit college, not only will they not use the accommodations, but even if they get the accommodations, one thing that we have to remember, it is up to the student at that point to even ask for their accommodations from the faculty and staff. And developmentally, many of our students, developmental, we know are 2 to 3 years behind. And they don't have the socials. They won't even order pizza. Like
And
talking to a person. It has to be DoorDash on an app. Right?
yes, ma'am.
Say that you have to talk to a person, that becomes even the other side of that. You have to ask for your accommodations. And this is the first time ever that we have to ask for them because from K through 12, they've just been provided.
Right,
That's,
right. And then, of course, the parent is the advocate, right?
yep.
But in this situation, like in K to 12, we can reach out, supervisor principals, special services, they can reach out to the parent or guardian and say, hey, This is what's going on in your IEP reviews or in annual reviews. You have that conversation, but once you get to college, there's no way that the instruct administration, faculty, they cannot reach out to your parent or guardian, and then we lose those accommodations, and they can very well help you in testing and just classes alone.
Absolutely. And so, Dr. Coleman, it's one thing that you were saying, and I know we could talk forever on, but go back to your comment about disproportionality. I know I wrote a paper about disproportionality discipline in Black and Brown students, right? And we know that is a thing. And then disproportionality in special education. And then we have this kind of what we call, this exceptionality of where now we have a special needs child that's Black and Brown, and then again having difficulty with discipline. Talk to me a little bit about how do we connect that student back to education?
Finding things that he or she, I mean, well, in this case, he likes the classroom, right? And then we'll set it up where it's okay. This period, social studies, is 45 minutes. I really need you to be attentive. If you can give me 30 minutes of hard work and dedication, and then Johnny, maybe I give you the next 15 that you can do something soft, that's something that you would like to do, right? Something that may be social studies related, but we can veer off a little. So number one, it keeps that student in the classroom. It keeps that student engaged with the actual social for the lesson. But then on the back end, he knows that if he do well and do what he's supposed to do, he may get a 15 to 10 minutes of doing something that he likes the most. And it's a chart system, reward system. And that's one of the things that we can possibly do to keep that student engaged. The other thing we could possibly do is, again, make the lesson engaging, right? Let's do something that the student would like. Now, here's where I think culturally responsive teaching come in, right? So again, once the first 3 days, once we get to know our scholars, our students, then we can start putting things together. We're like, okay, so if I know Michael likes sports and he really don't like to read too much, let me see if I can get him a Sports Illustrated book or sports book.
Mhm.
So now he may not be reading the words, but he's looking at the pictures and using context clues to put things together.
There it is.
It's the start.
Mhm.
It's the start.
So, one question before I get to my final question.
Yes,
How, because one thing I love that you are a principal and thinking about, I never had a Black male teacher outside of a gym teacher. I
correct.
had one Black female, K through 12. She was my biology teacher.
Yeah.
How important is it to see Black male educators in schools?
So let's say this. In one particular building I was in, there were 312 students in that building, right? Out of that 312 students, there were 19 students with both mom and dad in the house,
Mm, wow.
right? So, which means the other students, it was only the female figure, it was the mother in the house. So, my goal at the time was to, you know what? I went to central office. I said, we have a shortage of teachers and there are some vacancies. It'd be okay if I sit on the interview process and be a part of that process because I want to get a student, a teacher that comes into the building that's able to affect our scholars. And central office, if this is a teacher of color, a male teacher of color, please let me sit in so I can possibly have those conversations. So I was actually trying my best to get men in the building, men of color, right? So for Rowan University, I got my PhD at Rowan, well, ED at Rowan, doctoral degree. And one of the programs I'm in is called the Impact Program. And those are teachers, the male teachers, the men of color who are in education. Right. So what we do as mentors, we'll meet with them once a month on a Saturday at Rowan, and we just have conversations. We kind of coach them through. We mentor them through in hopes that they graduate Rowan with the education degree, and then we can bring to our community so they can support and service the students of color.
I love it. And that's what we need more of. I love it. So, all right, here's our final question. Thinking about the area of intellectual wellness, because I like to talk about all of wholeness when we talk about wellness. What are some tips for men when we think about even intellectual wellness? And I always tease that men don't read, right? Men watch the videos, the moms will read the books. And then what are some tips maybe for parents who are raising their sons, but see their sons not connecting to education?
Right. So for men, I have this program at my school. It's called Dads and Donuts. right? So one morning out of the market period, I order all these donuts. I have the dads come in and just eat donuts with their child, their son, right? And even their daughter, right? And that this brings so much energy into the building. So the first time I did it, I had 7 parents come in, and it was great. I'm happy. That was the first market period. The third market period, we could not use a classroom. We had to go down to the gym.
I love it.
So that 7 turned into 47.
There we go.
And then here's the best part about it. The men in that meeting, they had conversations amongst
Mm,
themselves. Guys, listen, we gotta as sponsors, we gotta do better. We gotta be there for our babies. We gotta be there. And that was a really great thing. And I was so happy about that. So that was on the men aspect. So for the single parents or mothers, try your best. I would say to enroll them into sports, right? And when I say sports, I can care less what type of sport it is. But the
mhm.
basis of all sports is discipline. Number one, you have to be disciplined. Number two, you have to be a team player. Even if it's a sport like tennis, we really have a partner, you still have to be disciplined because you got to be there on time. You have to work hard. You have to practice things of that nature. So that will definitely give the student discipline, and it will prepare them for the future as well. So those are two things. And then look for a mentor program. Yeah, there's a lot of mentor programs in cities, in school districts, and there's a lot of programs that's specifically for young men, boys. Get them involved. And then after that, make sure that, you can try to have those conversations with your uncle, the people that is pouring into the community, like the community activists. Those are some things as well. So with that said, I am so willing to help out the best way I can. Whatever I can do as a principal, as a mentor, as an advocate, please let me know because I have a lot of people who are doing that type of work and it's easy to connect. So yeah, I'm super excited about that.
Wonderful. All right. So before we go, going to humor me and in this segment of the show called the joke of
Okay.
the day. So we talk about wellness, right? Jokes and laughter helps to heal. Joyful heart is good medicine.
Yeah,
So you ready for our Laffy Taffy joke of the day?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. What is a snake's favorite subject in school?
What is a snake favorite subject in school?
Hmm.
You know what, Dr. Stacy, I do not know.
Ready? History.
How cute is that? History. That was good. That was good.
All right. So
And I
Dr.
would never
Coleman,
guess that one. I would never guess that one.
before we go, let everybody know how they can get in touch with you if you're on social media. I know you do professional development, you do speaking,
Yep.
you shared about
Yep.
the Impact program.
Yep.
Talk to the audience, tell them how they can connect in any way.
Simple, simple, simple. Just my regular email, Dr. Michael E. Coleman Jr. at Gmail. So all lowercase DrMeColemanJr at gmail.com. And then for my Instagram, it's Dr. Michael Coleman Jr., but it's DrMichaelColeman Jr. And then that's at IG. So those are the main sources that you could definitely get in contact with me. And then again, there's coaching sessions, there's things I can have one-to-one conversations with parent and guardians, there's people I can connect you to, there's events where I am in front of a lot of young men that I can invite you to so you can meet those individuals. There's parent groups that I work closely with. So yeah, it's a whole plethora of things that I'm involved with. But most importantly, it's not about me, it's making sure that the young men have a foundation, have somebody to talk to, and then it can actually grow in life, in academia, and in just being a good person, right? So I'm definitely available to have those conversations.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Coleman. So, folks, before we go, I'm going to do our Love the Babies Well send off. You know that, again, talking about intellectual wellness today, Proverbs 4:7, wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom, but with all you're getting, also get understanding. And we heard today in Dr. Coleman talking about even that relationship and that connection piece and understanding who the scholar in front of us. And that is so important as we're trying to connect our boys to education. And it's our jobs as caregivers to understand where the struggle is. I always say to parents, talk with your child, not just at them or to them, but sit down and talk with them because that is where the beginning of understanding. And parents, you've heard it before, caregivers, we truly are their first teacher. Folks, thanks so much for tuning in today to Dr. Stacy Show. Until next time, keep the faith, love the babies well, and pursue wellness.